We are delighted to have you join us this evening for this special drop-in with our friend Laura and Robin Clifford. And my name is Osa Schwab. I am the Director of Education and Marketing and Strategic Development at Urban Media Arts, formerly MATV. And tonight we have a special treat. You're going to get to hear from Robin and Laura about their Reeling Reviews show. But before we get into the conversation, I did want to just do a land acknowledgement, as we are recently in the habit of doing. And this is important because the people who lived here long ago, many of them are not around anymore, but we want to acknowledge the land that they were on and the people who lived here. And that was the Pennacook and Pawtucket and the Massachusetts people. At one point, they were led by Namapashimit, and there are records of a land sale to English settlers by his wife for this area known as Mystic. But there's so much more we want to know about these people and what they went through, often at the hands of the original settlers and or policies that destroyed their way of life. But more about that another time. And as I said, we have our special guests here, Robin and Laura Clifford. They are hosts and producers of Reeling Reviews, a movie review show that has been running since 1991, recorded in Studio A, except for a few occasions during COVID. This program is cablecast through Massachusetts and across the country. We will be recording this session, and it will stream on our channels and several others in various communities. I know Winchester wants to pick it up. And for the next hour, or until 7:30, we'll try to create the atmosphere of natural and warm conversation. Notice my fire in the back cave. Though this conversation will be a little more structured than we would be if we were actually by a fireside together. So the way it's going to work is we're going to show a clip. I'm going to ask a question, start the conversation in a couple of different categories, and then you're all welcome to share a question or put something in the chat. You can raise your electronic hand, or you can raise your physical hand, and I'll call on you. So let's get started. And why don't we, Amanda, let's show our first clip.
We've got murder afoot in multiple films tonight on our 30th anniversary celebration edition of Reeling. Back in the studio,
again.
Thanks to the good folks at MATV. Hi, I'm Laura Clifford.
Welcome back. I really mean that. I'm Robin Clifford.
Yeah, that was a happy moment.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that is so great. It's so fun that you said the 30th year anniversary. So tell us about the origins of Reeling Reviews. How did it all begin?
Let me start this one, Laura.
Okay.
Laura we were all both fond of Siskel and Ebert back then, and Laura would always comment about, we could do that, we could do better than that, and we didn't know anything about making a show. So I started volunteering at MATV and learned how to put on a studio show. And then I said to Laura, put up or shut up, girl. And we started, and we just kept going from there. It's always been fun. I'll have to say that. It's always been fun.
Yeah, and I don't know that I said we could do better than Siskel and Ebert.
Oh, you used to say that, yeah.
I had been yelling at them one too many times, and it's funny. I just had unearthed a movie I'd been looking for 30 years this past week, and watched it. And then I found the old Siskel and Ebert clip, and wouldn't you know it, I'm sitting here screaming at them again because I disagreed. But that's why we started. And I recall Robin and one of our crew were walking down Pleasant Street and saw the studio as it was first starting to be built. And the two of us and that friend, I think, are member numbers something like 12, 13, and 14 or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and we also did our producers projects. Robin did a piece on boxing, amateur boxing, that was right in the area. And I had gotten a hold of Malden's fire chief and initiated a cook-off among different fire stations in Malden. And those were our two different projects that we did before we started the show.
We ate well with the firehouse people.
Yeah, and then back then, of course, I remember our very first show. Unfortunately, we can't have a clip from it because it was done on 3/4-inch tape, which sat in our basement and basically liquefied or something. I'm not sure. Very, very old. But our very first show we did on the 5 Best Picture Oscar nominees for that year. And it was so long ago, we could only get clips for 4 of the 5 films. And the 5th, the one that we couldn't get a clip for, was the movie Ghost. So we had one of our crew members put a sheet over and carry a clay pot across the set to illustrate Ghost. We've gotten a
We're a little better now.
Then. And
yeah,
we've
gotten
also,
a little better.
Yeah, and also, of course, materials and access to them have changed over these decades as well.
Was there one of you who was more kind of driven or ambitious or more dreaming about doing this than the other?
Laura was
So
the driving point. Laura's a movie critic. I'm a guy who loves movies. Okay, two very different things. Laura's, if you look up fanatic in the dictionary, Laura's picture is going to be there. And in this case, that's a very good thing.
We also, just to give you a little bit of perspective, I mean, we have bookshelves full of books on various aspects of filmmaking and movies here. And back in the 90s, there was a great organization called the Boston Film and Video Foundation. And we took several classes there, which were great, 16mm film production, all kinds of things. We also took some classes at Emerson, where one of the instructors used to get the biggest kick out of us as a couple and used to refer to us as the Petries, Robin and Laura. Yeah.
It looks like we had a question from Anne. She was asking, how do you divide the roles? That's a great question. And then I open it up to anyone. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or shout it out.
Well, how we define the roles, if you're talking about just the two of us, I kind of set the show up and figure out which movies we're going to be reviewing, and I get all the clips and whatnot and put that together. But and Robin does the actual labor of getting the clips prepared to a hard drive and all of that. I also get the crew together. But as far as splitting up the labor on the show itself, we toss it back and forth. So there's a rhythm. Like one show will be what I call my show, so I'll kick it off. What you just saw at the beginning of this was one of Robin's shows. Robin kicked it off. He was the first one out. And then we just go back and forth throughout the show, Robin, Laura.
Although at one point when we were really mental before COVID, we would do as many as 13, and I think once we did 14 movies in a show in 30 minutes.
That's unbelievable.
You know.
All right,
Oh
I just
my-
have to ask this one question, and that is, typically, how many movies do you watch in a week?
Well, this is the hard time of year for that, because we are catching up with all of the movies that are on. But typically, what, 3 or 4 a week, easy
Well,
for
for
the
the
show.
show, not for, our own enjoyment. Unfortunately, I have a DVR that's got hundreds of movies on it that I never get a chance to watch because I'm always watching movies for the show. And then by the time I get the opportunity to watch a movie I just want to watch, I don't feel like watching a movie. I want to watch something less, that requires less
Thought.
Thank you. Yeah, but we're watching movies constantly. And right now it's January. Actually, now is not our heavy time. That happens between late October through mid-December, where you're seeing all the award movies. That gets crazy. Then you're sometimes watching three and 4 movies a day, because
Right.
we've seen movies that aren't going to be opening until February and March now. But if they were potential award winners that qualified for awards last year, we had to see them all by
I often
early
have
December.
people say, what do you like out there? And it's like, what did you see? And I'll tell you what I thought about it, because we see so many movies, I can't remember them all. I'd have to write it down, which I do. I write them all down.
So George, I know you had your hand up, and maybe Paula too. So George and then Paula.
Sure. Hey, how you doing?
Hi, George. I thought I saw that handsome face.
Oh, geez. I had a question. What is some of the criteria, or if you have any, that you base your judgments when you're watching a movie? Do you have any kind of a checklist, or just what's the process and how you judge a movie?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
I don't know that it's all that scientific. Definitely don't have a checklist.
Okay.
About the one thing I will say, it's very, very rare that I give an F grade to a film, an absolute complete F, because I will say, if it's in focus and you can hear it,
At least a D. Yeah.
it's already got a little bit of something. But yeah, you take everything into, I mean, there's the acting, there's the storytelling, there's the direction, there's all these things, but I don't know that you have to take into account. And is the movie accomplishing what it set out to? For example, I might give a horror film an A-, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I think that film is on the same level as an Akira Kurosawa film. But in that genre, for what it was trying to do, it
Sure.
was at the very top of its type.
So yeah, I just I know from watching the show that you have different you have different preferences for movies. So I'm wondering, how do you how would you characterize your differences, and where do you overlap, because you do like some of the same things as well. So just kind of wondering how you characterize the kinds of movies you like and don't like, and or kind of what resonates with you.
Actually,
That's changed
before
over the
you
years.
Before you answer that, Robin, can we show a clip that shows some different opinions, and then you can go ahead and answer that. So Amanda, would you like to share clip numero 2? And then we'll go to answer that question.
So what you gonna do with that thing?
We're going hunting.
So what you hunting?
It's crazy.
Slight difference of opinion here, I think.
Oh yeah. Before we begin, this is only going to be showing the weekend of September 14th at the Coolidge, and as part of their midnight series. And if you like
you're a horror fan,
movies, if you're
yep.
a Nicolas Cage fan, you have to go see this movie. This blew my mind. This is from writer-director Panos Cosmatos, who
Me
did
too,
the
but for
Beyond
different reasons.
the Black Rainbow. And this guy had such a vision. There are so many totemic things and references to movies, and it's such a thing of the 80s, and yet it's better than any of the movies like this that were made in the 80s.
well.
The whole thing seems to be inspired by a custom van mural painted by Frank Frazetta, and Nicolas Cage. This is a
Nicolas Cage is Nicolas Cage. I love Nicolas Cage.
But this is not just one of his over-the-top performances
is.
like in Mom and Dad. This is a real, heartfelt, emotional performance. He has one scene where he just
I think
dissolves
you're reading
into
a little
grief
more into this than there is.
that
there.
was just earth-shattering. And his performance is great, but the other thing that's great, Linus Roach as the cult leader is positively eerie. He's like this leader with the feet of clay. He's masculine yet feminine. That little bit in the
Yes, I know you
trailer
like that a
where
lot.
they merged his face with Andrea Riseborough's, that was creepy. And from that point in, he was always slightly feminine. And she's also good. She's kind of strange and witchy, and she just rebels
Which is
against
probably
him.
the whole.
Oh, I have.
If you want to see Nicolas Cage give an over the top, I mean, he is a man possessed in this.
But that's not all there is to it. There's even a mini.
Yeah,
there's
well,
even a little
and they have
commercial in the middle of the movie.
Satan's Seed, Demon Seed, the motorcycle gang. Come on, this was clunky.
What about-
and it was 80s.
It was not
I
clunky.
found it real
It was
clunky.
brilliantly conceived. What about the Cheddar Goblin mac and cheese commercial that comes out of nowhere? I gave it an A minus.
It was funny. Yes, I know you gave it an A minus. I gave it a C plus.
That was a fun review.
So I guess that shows one genre that I prefer over Robin, which is the horror genre. I'm very big into horror films.
Well,
But-
back when we first started, I really liked action films and such. Like one of my favorite films of all times was Die Hard. And then when the 90s started to roll, all of a sudden the action films all became the same. And I started to get more interested in foreign films, documentaries, animations, and those have been my passions over the past 30 years.
Well, there's also war movies.
War movies, oh yeah.
You really love war movies. Yes, and I like more, art film type of things.
Avant-garde.
Yeah, more experimental films. I think Robin prefers a more linear, straightforward narrative.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we definitely do agree on, good, solid, well-executed, well-acted dramas, and and I'll enjoy a good war film, and Robin will even occasionally admit to enjoying a good horror film.
Or even a musical.
It looks like the Taylors have a question. Do you want to just share that?
Yes.
Hi.
Hey. So our question was, obviously you're married, so you have a good rapport when you're talking, but how do you keep that like light conversation like on the air? Because it translates well when you're listening or watching, I should say.
We don't talk about movies after we see them for the most part. We may chat about it, but we don't really have, what we do on the show is that's us talking about the movies then.
Yeah, we found early on that before we started doing this, of course, we were always talking about movies. And then we found when we started the show that if we did that too much outside of the show, we try to, obviously we can't get away from it entirely, but we do try not to have big in-depth conversations about any films until we're sitting on that set.
Oh, and you just had an example of why we didn't like doing the show on Zoom. Yeah, I'd be
That
sitting
was
there
on
and Laura
cue.
would freeze up and I go, I don't know what she's saying or anything. And she'd be going out fine. Yeah, we were very, very happy to get back to the studio.
would you prefer dramas or documentaries?
We've always gone across every genre imaginable, I think. In fact, I was talking about our first show. I remember on our very second show, we did a documentary on Andy Warhol and some big commercial movie and probably some foreign films. So yeah, as far as film festivals, yeah, boy, in our younger days, that was something we went to Venice one year and put together a whole show based on the Venice Film Festival. The following year, we went to San Sebastian and put together another special.
Early on, we did Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto, of course. And oddly enough, we haven't done enough of the local festivals, although we were always very, very we did the supportive of the Museum of Fine Arts annual French Film Festival. We covered that every year, and I'm really sad that they've terminated their film program there. And we'll do occasional, not really film festival, but a lot of times the Harvard Film Archive will put together filmmaker retrospectives and have the filmmaker come in, or they'll do some kind of a thematic program series, and we like to cover those sometimes as well. When Robin mentioned earlier about doing as many as 13 or 14 movies in a half an hour, it would be because we were covering a festival and also trying to review the big movies that were coming out generally at this, all in one show.
I see Jim Muzzy had a question. He says, well, he asked if either of you like licorice pizza.
As a food, no. As a movie, yes.
I was wondering that. I figured it had to be a movie.
Yeah, that was actually one that we had a little bit of disagreement on. I liked it a lot more than Robin did, although Robin didn't dislike it. So
no, I liked the movie. I just didn't like parts of it.
Yeah.
Where it strayed away from the movie.
And did the person asking the question like Licorice Pizza? Why that film? Why are you asking about that film in particular? I'm curious.
Well, it has a big buzz for it now. And some of the ads, it says the best picture of the year. I thought, I agree with Robin, thought the moments that it strayed from the story weren't needed, you know, and I didn't understand the digressions that Paul Thomas Anderson took.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're familiar with the background of the film. It was based on a friend of his experiences. So a lot of those things really happened, like the John Peters thing with the waterbed is a story from his friend's youth. And also it was based on some of Anderson's recollections of growing up in that place in that time. So I think he had a tendency to be a little bit more loosey-goosey where he's with this film. And I kind of liked that aspect of it, seeing a filmmaker that was always so controlled with his material, just letting it, you know, kind of ramble around a little bit more.
So we had another question from Alberto, and this is sort of a good pivot into kind of what it's been like to hone your craft, because you've been doing this for 30 years. And Alberto's question was, where do you post your reviews? So I know you can share a little bit about all the different places. I know you're, what do they call it, on Rotten Tomatoes? What's that?
Tomatoes, yes, RottenTomatoes.com. Yeah, we're on there. We, of course, have our own website, reelingreviews.com. That's where you're going to find everything, including, you know, all the past shows, top 10 lists going back for 20 years. We actually had our website up and running in something like 1993, I think, when the web was just in its infancy. Unfortunately, we had a really old website for many, many years and just got it upgraded just about 2 years now. But yeah, so we post everything on our own website. It's also linked on Rotten Tomatoes. You'll also find our reviews linked on IMDb. There's also the movie review query engine. We're on that. And then we tend to pop up various other places where people.
Well, plus we also belong to a couple of different organizations out there, the Broadcast Film Critics Association, the Online Film Critics Society. Laura's a member of the Boston Film Critics Society. So yeah, we've got those affiliations too.
The Online Film Critics Society also has reviews linked there on their website. Boston Society was doing it for a while, and I think they kind of fell away from it, but there might be some on there as well.
So I'm going to just invite anyone who has a question to just, chime in and let's see. Anne, do you want to ask your question? Then George, I just see, and then is it Javier or Katrina? Is that correct? You can go after. So Anne, why don't you go ahead and ask? You had a good question about COVID.
So obviously COVID has been devastating for the movie making industry. How have you felt about it? And do you see any silver linings? Do you see any trends or anything that's come out of all these challenges to movie making?
For me, the silver lining is that we can see things on screener links instead of having to go to a theater.
Yeah,
Seriously.
Well,
for me.
It depends. It just depends on the distributor. There are a number of distributors that are sticking to their guns and insisting that people go into press screenings in a theater. That was especially acute with all these awards baity movies because they always want you to see their film on the big screen. As far as coming out of that, I think COVID has exacerbated a trend that's been happening, the whole streaming trend. I think it just kind of lit a fire under it, really. I don't think you're going to see, some people have been saying the movie going experience is dead I've been hearing this for 20 years. I don't think you're going to see that happen entirely, but what's disturbing to me is it's those middle of the road movies seem to be getting lost. It's if you look at any trends since COVID happened, older people are staying away from theaters. So what's really driving any business that's still ongoing are superhero movies and horror films. That's what's getting the people into the theater.
Well, for example, West Side Story opened a really big blockbuster film, and it basically tanked at the theaters. Nobody wanted to go see a musical, but if you had Spider-Man, you had $260 billion over a weekend. I mean, it's changed.
Yeah.
The theatrical experience changed a lot.
Yeah.
Well, thank God too that Boston has a number of independent theaters going, like the Brattle, like the Coolidge Corner, and there you're still getting a nice mix of adult cinema. The Brattle has a great retrospective going on right now of the best films of 2021, and I don't think there's a superhero movie in the entire lineup.
Well, I have to say, the other night, my nephew was in town, and we created a cinema experience by projecting onto the wall, and he made popcorn, and it was really nice. And I haven't done that in a long time, so maybe we have to create that, that experience. Yeah. George, you had a question.
Sure. I'm actually going to ask you 2 questions, and they're for both of you. And these should be fun ones. One, and you only have to name one or whatever, but what movie do you remember in particular where after the credits rolled, it was the end of the film, and you said, wow, I was amazed. That was an amazing movie. And the second question for both of you is, do you have a movie that you like so much that you can watch again and again and never get tired of it? And if so, what are they?
Okay. Laura, you go first while I think about this.
Yeah, I had two experiences recently in the first part of your question with the WoW. One, a movie that's available to just about everybody because just about everybody gets Netflix, is Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog.
Yeah.
That movie.
That was a good movie. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, I loved that one. And the other one, which has also been getting an awful lot of press and been sweeping critics awards, is Ryosuke Hamaguchi's Drive My Car. That I found to be a really transcendent experience. I absolutely loved it.
I've got one for your first question about a movie that stayed with me forever. Local Hero.
Local Hero.
Local Hero. To this day, if it were on TV, I would be watching it.
Yep.
And there are a number of films like that I really just, well, West Side Story. There's a good example of it. Put West Side Story on as background noise. Wait 5 minutes, you'll have something great to watch.
No, Local Hero had a great soundtrack.
Yeah, Local Hero is a movie that we generally watch almost every time we take a trip and come home. That's what we put on. For me, I literally have seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 100 times. 100 times. I met Gunnar Hansen, one of my favorite ever movie-related experiences. He was a big teddy bear, by the way. Unfortunately, he passed away less than a year after I met him. Yeah, I've watched that movie so many times it isn't funny. I have it on videotape, Laserdisc, and a 2K restoration Blu-ray.
And I think she had a chip embedded in her brain to play it over and over again.
To watch it whenever.
Yeah, another one I've watched a bazillion times is Alex Cox's Sid and Nancy.
Oh, yep.
I can watch that over and over and over. You know, you can practically recite the lines from that movie, but it's still enjoyable to watch. What about you, George? Do you have one?
Oh, that I watch all the time?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. I love Willy Wonka. The original.
I'm curious about everybody. Do they have a movie? Any of you have a movie that you really like and that you'd watch over and over again?
I have one. I was just thinking of mine is The Fugitive. For whatever reason, Harrison Ford is so captivating. Dr. Kimball, you know.
That's one of the ones that I will watch if it's on.
I don't know what it is. I always find myself watching, and then the follow-up with the U.S. Marshals, and I don't know. I don't know what it is.
That's also a good city movie where the city of Chicago, where it was shot, was a real character in the film. I like movies that really get into a place and give you a good sense of a place, and that was one of them.
Harold and Maude.
Oh yeah,
I can watch that again and again.
I have to admit, I do watch Sound of Music multiple times in my life.
I put School of Rock.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love Jack
one.
Black in that.
I love that.
And the kids are great.
Makes me
Kids are
smile
amazing.
every time I watch it.
Yep.
Yeah, and George saying Harold and Maude reminded me, Hal Ashby, Being There. Being There is a
Oh, I
movie.
love being there.
Yeah, there are few films that well, you have to think about it, but to consider a movie absolute perfection where there's not one tiny little mistake, nothing is off about it. Being There is one of those movies.
And he likes to watch.
That's cool.
We just watched it again recently. Laura has. We had it on Blu-ray and Laserdisc, whatever, and we watched it again. Yeah.
I've got the urge to watch it now after talking about it.
Yeah, me too. That's so cool. Good question, George.
Yeah. I was gonna ask. I'm a big superhero guy. I know Laura was kind of down on superhero movies, but so Batman has come around. There's been so many different directors, actors, and there's one coming out in March with the director Matt Reeves, who redid Planet of the Apes. What's kind of your, like, do you guys like Batman, or is it kind of like I know Laura probably likes Batman Returns maybe, but what do you guys think about that?
I have not liked superhero movies in a long time because it's mainly just most of the same. But the latest Spider-Man I thought was terrific. I thought it had so much going for it. It wasn't formula at all, even though it was formula. And it was just very intelligently done, which is what I don't care for with most of the Avengers movies. I just get bored by them.
I would want to say maybe I am coming across as being down on superhero movies. I'm not. There are some that I really, really love. Some of the Marvel movies I've really, really enjoyed. It's just they've taken over too big a percentage of what's out there. I mean, whenever you look at the Marvel slate, it's just like, rein it in, guys, That's my issue with it. Not that there's just too much of it, too many of them. And after a while, there is an awful sameness about them, especially the way they end them is almost always the same. So that's my issue. But I am looking forward to the new Batman movie. I hear it's extremely dark. The darker a superhero movie is, the more I'm apt to enjoy it. And I'm also a big fan of Robert Pattinson, who I think is a terrific actor and has been doing some great work in little independent films. And I'm very curious to see his Batman.
Same.
Pattinson's Batman?
Yeah.
You didn't know that? Are you living in a cave, Robin? Well, yes.
Well, look behind me. What do you see? A cave.
The Bat Cave.
Hey, no spoilers, Laura.
So we are going to transition now to the last phase. So Amanda, if you want to play our next clip, and Robin and Laura, we have a question that you can ponder, which is the future of how the film industry is going to be changing, and what you hope for in terms of your show in the future. So.
Welcome to Reeling number 736, our first show in the time of the coronavirus. Welcome, I'm Robin Clifford.
And I'm Laura Clifford. And right off the bat, we're going to be talking about Why Don't You Just Die, writer, director, editor Kira Sokolov's splashy debut, which revels in comedic violence that plays like a live-action, itchy and scratchy cartoon. It's about our hero, Mikhail, a young man with a blonde buzz cut wearing a Batman sweatshirt who's been asked by his femme fatale girlfriend to kill her father.
Kill her
I
father.
hated using Zoom for the show. Oh my gosh. Well, you notice we spent a lot of time on our sets. Yeah.
That was our very first Zoom show, and we went on to do Reeling on Zoom I was shocked. We did Reeling on Zoom for a full year.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know.
And
that.
I actually gave that clip to show how awkward it was because we couldn't go back to our very first show. It was really difficult to do Reeling on Zoom, and I don't think it was as enjoyable for the audience to watch either. And boy, did we miss our crew, because
More than anything.
Yeah, it was terrible, but it not only personally, because we really like our crew and like hanging out with them, but because it's really, it was like trying to juggle and spin and do all this stuff at the same time. Timing was incredibly difficult doing the Zoom show because you're trying to time yourself while you're trying to think and talk, and it was tough, which is why in that earlier clip, I was so happy to be back in the studio. As far as where the movie industry is heading, I think we kind of talked about that a little earlier. I don't know that anybody really knows. I mean, except that we're seeing this trend that it's certain types of movies that are taking over the theatrical experience. And you're seeing more and more things really going to streaming. And in some ways, you know, it's hard to even fight against that anymore. I think people are setting up, you know, these big screen televisions with
Well, that's just
surround
it.
sound
Yeah.
and everything, so that you can sometimes have a better experience at home than you might in a theater with, say, a particularly obnoxious audience, or a theater where they don't have the projection lamps high enough, so you're getting a dim picture. There's all kinds of things that happen in the theater itself that degrade the experience. On the other hand,
I think your first part is more significant, is that the home electronics have gotten so sophisticated, even in the last couple of years, that the trend is going to be more and more towards streaming. And unfortunately, I think the theatrical experience is going to be blockbusters.
On the other hand, on the plus side for the theatrical experience, it's a shared experience and you're captive. When you're watching something at home, you're very interrupt driven, or can be, which takes away from it. I think that impacted a movie we were talking about earlier, The Power of the Dog, has a lot of people seem to be confused by the ending. And I think that might have to do with watching it at home and maybe not paying as, you know, not being as entirely focused on the film as you would be if you saw it in a theater. And I find this concept of people watching movies on their phones just be like, oh, or even an iPad. You know,
well, even on a computer screen, on my laptop, I would never watch a movie on my laptop.
Yeah, we used to have to do that sometimes, and it was miserable. We both hated it.
I would also like to ask you, and then invite everybody here to ask questions, but I'm interested in where in your wild imagination you want to take Reeling Reviews and your work.
You know, we're just kind of plodding along. I mean, we've been mixing up content a little bit now. You know, I still do focus on theatrical, but try to pull in, you know, look for some interesting films that are only going to be available digitally, and pull those into the mix as well. We do that a bit more now. As far as the technology aspect of the show, there are things I would love to do that just I never have the time. For example, the opening montage that announces Reeling is still in standard definition because I just don't have time. It takes a lot of time to put together that little 30-second thing with these split-second clips, and just haven't had the time to do it. I would have loved to have been able to mess around with green screen and, you know, try and do something like maybe have us sitting on either side of the clip running in the background behind us. Again, you know, we just spend so much time putting the show together in the format it is now. We don't really get the opportunity to try out some of these newer ideas.
The show is so content oriented that we really are just doing the show. The time for innovation. I mean, we have lives, so we have to do other things too. And so the innovation, what we need is a production team. Seriously, is what we need.
Well, Anne just put in the chat something that maybe we can do to get an intern to redo the intro, or even make your show kind of a learning experience for the technology piece, not to interrupt your content. So that might be something to explore.
You mean I have to become more tech savvy?
No,
I like
that interns would help with that. I mean,
good. I can have them do it. Okay, yeah, no problem there.
the funny thing is, though, Robin and Laura met at Bolt, Baranek, and Newman, they were in high tech. I don't know if you want to share just a snippet of that, because I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, we were in high tech in the very early days. I was using email in 1978 and dialing up with a rubber phone coupler with the still corded telephone to dial up to play Zork at MIT, way back, and doing all these crazy kind of things. But we did meet, and of course we got dinosaured out. The technology just zoomed ahead of us so fast that it was like, I can't keep up with it anymore. But we actually met at BBN over a book that I was reading that had been made into a movie.
Herman Wouk's Youngblood
was
Hawk.
in our relationship from the very, very beginning.
Or was it Marjorie Morningstar?
But what was the first one?
Was it Youngblood Hawk or Marjorie Morningstar?
It was Youngblood Hawk.
There you go.
The book that I was reading, yes. And the very first movie we ever saw together was, I just blanked. Breaker Morant. We went to see Roman Polanski's Tess, and it was sold out, so we went to see Breaker Morant instead.
That's so cool.
Movie.
And I think Local Hero was the second or third movie we saw together in a theater.
Yep.
Well, this has been quite a treat, Robin and Laura. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your
Thank
journey.
you for having us. It was
And
fun.
thank you, everyone, for being here and contributing some questions. And it's really a fun little conversation. And this will be recorded.
Well, we enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
It's amazing what you guys have done. It's just pretty incredible that you've been just consistently producing this quality show for that long. Every other week, as the staff says, religiously, even though I don't think either of you are religious. But
Well, thank you to our crew who have been, everybody's been with us for years, and some have been with us from the beginning. So
Yeah,
30-year crew.
We have a really great crew.
Yeah.
Well,
that's important.
definitely we're going to add to it. I think more people would enjoy being on your crew and can make it really high tech.
It's great to have that backbone.
Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you all for
And
coming.
I was going to say, and tune in next week for episode 782.
Wow.
All right.
Great.
Unbelievable. Thank you all for coming. Have a lovely evening.
Yes, thanks,
You
folks.
too. Thanks for
See you
having
then.
us.
Good night,
Great.
everybody. Nice talking with you.
Yeah,
See
great
you.
to talk with you.